In this session, we're going to cover KPIs and banding inside Pyramid. To start, we're going to build a very simple, quick and dirty KPI using the tools in Discover. We can start by building a grid showing sales. And then to create a KPI effect, we can drag and drop margin onto the indicator drop zone and decide to draw arrows. The arrow indicators are ranked from high to low and using 5 bands. Now we can take net profit and choose to color the indicators using the linear scale from high to low, and this is showing every margin value with the color scale based on net profit. Using the same mechanism, we can use average as the coloring model for coloring our margin driven KPIs. This is how one draws a simple KPI in Pyramid. However, you can design more complex ones using the formulation tools. We start by picking a model that the KPI will apply to, then we choose its graphic. Next, we define its actual value. In this case, we're simply going to choose sales. Follow that by designing the target value. First, we copy the actual value, and then we're going to choose a different data point that will drive the target. In this case, it'll be the previous quarter, using the functional selection from the quarter hierarchy. This here means that every time this query runs, the target value that drives the sales outcomes is going to be based on last quarter's values for sales. Now we'll use a template for measuring status. We will use growth percentage, which is simply actual minus target divided by target. And we'll use a format string of percentage. Next, we will apply banding. This is the new banding that can be applied to a KPI. We are going to use a tri-band. The tri-band can be stated in a variety of different ways, using static, values, formulas, parameters, and even an evaluation set. We'll start with static values. In this case, the banding will begin at -1 and go up to negative 0.1 or 10%. The mid-band will be from -10% to +10%, and the final band will be 1 or 100%. Let's now save our KPI so we can use it in Discovery. Let's now return to the grid we created earlier and remove the KPI we added. Next, we open up the function list and look for the KPI calculation we just created. By checking the box, we add it to the grid. You can see all the KPI graphics plus the values shown inside the grid. In the elements tree, you can see all the parts of the KPI, including the actual value, target, status, and all the different band metrics. At the moment, the KPI doesn't make a lot of sense because it's reliant on the previous quarter to make any kind of comparison. So before we continue, we're going to use quarter as a slice, and the first thing we're going to do is choose a quarter in the middle of the range. And suddenly, you can see all the KPIs light up, starting with very high numbers that are in green, all the way down to mid numbers in yellow, and ultimately low numbers in red. You can see -20% is red, +19% is green, and -2.3% is yellow, exactly in line with the bands we created previously in the static KPIs definition. One nice thing is that the elements of the KPI can be dropped onto the screen like any other metric, so you can actually see them as normal measures if you so choose to as part of your analysis. In this case, we're able to look at the status of the KPI side by side with the value created originally. Right-clicking on a KPI will expose the advanced KPI band engine, allowing you to customize banding from Discovery. Now let's duplicate our static KPI definition and create a new one that is based on dynamic bands. First thing, let's change the band engine. In this case, we're going to use something called the evaluation set, which will allow us to pick a set of elements that will drive the different metrics used for coming up the bands. In this case, we're going to use the list of manufacturers. Next, we're going to say for a given evaluation set, please look at the list of manufacturers and pick the minimum value to drive the band. That should go up to the average level for the evaluation set, which in turn should go to the medium, and then finally to the maximum. Let's save our new KPI and rename it. And now let's return to our grid and begin to use it. If you look carefully at the grid, you will notice that while we're using the same actual, target, and status values for both KPIs, the banding produces different indicators because of the different logic. To better explain this, let's look at them side by side for two different quarters. If you look carefully, You will notice that the two sets of numbers produce slightly different KPIs because the static bands are based on a -1 to 1 range, while the dynamic bands are effectively calculated between a min-max range of numbers for the given quarter across all the manufacturers. This ability to modulate the banding values based on the sets of data used in your query provides a highly powerful analytic capability that is unmatched with static banding.